The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi Rogers, can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk.
Looking for a pair of shoes? Les Hub Stores has a wide range of selection for unisex footwear. We have the best quality of all brands at pocket-friendly prices, and we make deliveries countrywide. Just place your order or reach us on 0772 08 0090. You can also check up at Les Hub Stores on all our social media platforms. Les Hub, craft your own footprints.
Go to the church, though.
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, do you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly, because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk. The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to today's edition of the Hotline Show. My name is Roger Stuyawe, and it's a very great honor yet again to be in this space. I always begin with a disclaimer that my being here, especially my opinions from the people and the experiences I've had, not necessarily expert, but nevertheless we learn together. And so today, as usual, we are hosting gentlemen who are experts in particular fields. We want to look at a lot of things political, most of it at the local level. Now we're going to look at the powers of the Secretary Generals, party Secretary Generals. What power do they have? How much power are they given? Do they have even power with their party presidents? A lot of stuff around that conversation. is what we're going to have. And so we have a Secretary General for National Economic Empowerment Dialogue, NEED in short. He's going to be also giving us a perspective of what the powers are that he has and how does it vary with the party president. A gentleman, Asuman Odaka, it's not his first time, you've heard him before. And of course we have Honorable. We have, he's a honorable officially. I was advised some weeks ago that he's a honorable man. I cannot just call him Mr. He has earned it. And so we have Honorable Joseph Ochieno, and he's going to also be giving us his perspective. One as an experienced person who has been in the political spaces, but also has worked in different spaces, so maybe he can give us an experience from without, where some things are happening, and what are those things that we can actually adopt from those places and apply them here, those that are good practices, of course. So we're going to get so much into that, and of course, I think we can start right away. And the start, I want to begin with one who is now is more like the guest.
Indeed.
How have you seen, how is NEED, for example, to begin with? How are you doing? How are you
We as NEED, every other day that comes, from our own assessment, from our point of view, there is progress. In this country, there is an enormous challenge, especially in regard to starting an organization, and not just any other organization, but a political organization. Then you begin building, building the systems, the structures, and whatever it is to become an organization. You see, in this country, people are accustomed, to having, there are even parties, they have baptized briefcase parties. Parties that were registered in this country. I think we have about 43 now registered political parties, if not more. But those that you hear about are about 6 or even less. The reason is simple, because of capacity, because of system, because of maybe structure. So when we started the NEED, we didn't want, and we still don't want NEED to be just like others. We started it. It is now coming to 9 months officially, but we think there is real good progress in regard to stamping its foot on the political territories of Uganda, and I think I am proud to be called a Secretary General because of the tenterhooks we have spread. So we could be, others are already telling us we are moving slowly, but I'm telling them we are moving slowly, but steadily and firmly. So any step we have taken, we don't intend to step backward. We move forward and we are forward looking. So NEED is okay.
And if I may add one before Mr. Ochieno comes in. When you measure your progress so far with the other parties that are also new, relatively new, there are those that have been there for a long time, like the PPP, but you don't know what is going on exactly. But those that have come at relatively a later stage, like yourselves, including yourself, when you measure yourself against them, do you feel like you're doing enough?
I think we may not be doing enough, but I am circumstantially, I am satisfied with what we are doing. I am not complaining. And I don't think there is any member of NEED that is complaining given the speed. There are some members of NEED who the other week were accusing me that we are moving very, very fast. And I was telling him the reason for which we formed the NEED, because there is an urgent problem in this country to solve. So everything is treated as an emergency now in NEED. So we must have a system with the capacity enough to confront the magnitude of the problem the country is faced with.
All right. We are glad to have you. Thank you so much for making your time to be here with us today.
Always a pleasure.
It's important that we're going to get, especially owing to the discussion of the day, we're going to get some very good information from you as a Secretary General. and what that is in the party structures. And what
Be
it
careful
is.
when you say that. When I am with the Joseph, you
yeah,
know that
Joseph-
I have come to learn.
Yes, yes. With Joseph, every time we come here, I tell people get a pen and a paper.
Yeah.
There's a thing he's going to take away, and we always most certainly do. You're welcome to the show. sir.
My absolute pleasure to be here. I'm delighted to be with you two, my two young brethren. I can see you guys enjoying Digitalk tea, and this place is fantastic to be. Very generous with fantastic camera people providing us these teas. My cup is also Digitalk, except it's not written. So viewers should mind about it. But look, why don't you allow Obana Secretary General build onto that in terms of what he's doing from his political point?
Maybe that can also give us a foundation of what is the role to begin with. Just a foundation. You as a Secretary General.
My role. It is a mistake, first of all, to think that Secretary Generals from all parties have the same power, the same role, and everything, because duties, roles, and responsibilities of every Secretary General from every political party is only given to you by the constitution of that party. But of course, there are others that are cross-cutting. There are parties, I think generally most parties in this country, Secretary Generals are the overall administrators of the parties. And so I am for need. Number two, in need, Secretary General is the official spokesperson. You have a spokesperson yet. Yes, there's a party spokesperson, but a Secretary General's word can override.
The right of a spokesperson.
Yes. The party spokesperson, even when he's going to utter, as long as it is an official party position, he should have at least consulted and interacted with the Secretary General. Because we don't want a scenario where a party spokesperson goes out there, speaks, then is contradicted by the Secretary General. The other thing is that the Secretary General is the overall mobilizer of the party in need. We also, Secretary General of Need is also the overall keeper or custodian of assets of the party, keeping records of the party, and so on and so forth. And so those are my responsibilities as far as the need is concerned. Others, because the others which sometimes are not talked about, you may have so many secretaries. You have a secretary in charge of publicity, you have secretary in organizing secretary, you have that's sometimes called mobilization, others research and so on and so forth, legal and so on. But all those are secretary, but you are the Secretary General, you are the overall. And therefore, there are certain things that are expected of you. Sometimes you are the whip of those secretaries. You are the overall overseer of all the activities. In other words, Secretary General of Need is the overall coordinator of all the activities that are happening within the party. All secretaries report to you, and within Need is that we give quarterly reports. Every secretary gives quarterly reports to the Secretary General.
Who checks the Secretary General?
Sorry?
Who checks the Secretary General?
Who checks Secretary General? Yes. I'm coming, okay. But you see, the party president is the overall political leader of the party. The overall political leader of the party. the Secretary General reports to the National Executive Committee and the National Council and the National Delegates Conference, depending on what nature of report is supposed to be presented when and to where. There are reports that are supposed to be to the National Delegates Conference. There are those reports that you are supposed to, Secretary General is supposed to give to the National Council, but there are those, because of sometimes the operational nature of the work, the National Executive Committee. So the National Executive Committee is supposed to check. Of course, you know that the National Executive Committee, for our case, is chaired by the party president. Mm-hmm. So the party president sometimes may act or guide or check the Secretary General, but depending on the nature of action, nature of checking, reports the same and gets endorsement from also the National Executive Committee. So that is how our system works. And I want to think that is how a number of systems work. Now, I have seen there tracing the crisis and so on. I know that very fast, I think I have read or maybe interacted, perused through maybe the crisis that happened between my brother's party, Milton Obote, against John Kakonge, against Vingira. You would also read about the one of Basil Bataringaya, Ben Kiwanuka. There is also one in Kenya here, Tom Mboya versus, the other, Kenyatta. But you see, don't treat, of course, then the most recent one, Muntu versus Nandala here. Then
and now the current one.
No, the current one is not Secretary General versus the party president. It is just around the power. Of course, part of the report, I am told, the Nabuso report is that they should reduce the power of the Secretary General. That the Secretary General of FDC is so powerful that they should amend the Constitution to reduce his power. But you see, when you look at all those, in my own opinion, I think if you only need to make a case-by-case analysis. For example, if you looked at Kakonge versus Obote versus Vingira, you know that one was pure ideological difference. You know that if you looked at and read properly about the Vingira, I don't think he really subscribed to the leftist level of UPC. Depending the way I read his ideas, I never saw him. I simply read these things also. If you look at the one of this one of DP of Kiwanuka versus Bazili Bataringaya, you know that it was a power struggle, but also Bazili Bataringaya thinking that when he allies with the Uganda, there is a way he's going to get, because his attempt was to foil the UPC Kabaka Yeka alliance, so that for him he gets the Kabaka Yeka, so that he defeats and becomes president, and also uses that against Kiwanuka. You know that it was purely some kind of power struggle, machination, but also not grounded in ideology. Coming deep up to the most recent one of Nandala Muntu, you would also see some kind of... So, I wouldn't want to think they are all uniform. Number one, you will see that, of course, as Secretary General, people also have ambitions. People have ambition. Nobody joins politics without ambition. I have told everybody. But now, these ambitions, and let me tell you, every individual you see walking has a potential of abusing the rules, has a potential of abusing the rules or the law. But you see, what is important, therefore, to the limitation would be on how your rules can be, the nature of your rules that govern you. If the nature of the rule that govern you gives the Secretary General unlimited, because there are other, I don't know whether the current UPC constitution or the previous one, it had the objectives. Now, the last objective was do all what is within human to achieve all the above. You get it? Do everything that is possible to achieve
all the above
the above objective. Now, that is limitless. Yeah. It is limitless. Now, if you put that kind of power into an ambitious person, you are simply putting impunity into the hand of a potential abuser of power. Yes. So that is now, even at the level of, for example, now when you look at could it be the Nandala now? Nandala, the FDC constitution actually gives Nandala power to calling of that the grassroots elections. It is the Secretary General's power, by the way. How it is done to a level processing the the return up to. For him, he simply presents a report, the names of the returns to the chairman, the party chairman. Of course, it is the chairman EC that presents to the Secretary General, then Secretary General
to the party chairman.
But you see, the chairman EC uses delegated power of the Secretary General. So, if there are no other system to check, it is prone to abuse. So, the only thing we need to do is, one, strengthen our, what we call our internal, the internal structures, internal systems, including, of course, the constitutional adherence to our constitutional, our constitutionalism. Number two is you cannot, because which constitution? Is it of PPP? There's a constitution I was reading, I think of Anne. You read the constitution and you feel, there's a political party. You feel a constitution and you feel the Secretary General in himself is an entity equal to, can veto the power of the National Executive Committee. You do like that, anybody will abuse it.
That's true. Let's get to the perspective of our elder. Not that he's very old.
I'm extremely younger than, much younger than Mr. Museveni. So I'm a young man, like my headmaster would say.
It's only from respect from here. But from all of this, of course you have been around, you have seen the developments that have happened in this office, especially the Secretary General, in every party that has happened in Uganda. And when you look at all of that powers, and now of course drawing from the Museveni during his fracas with Mbabazi, and him cutting the powers and saying, now you cannot elect the Secretary General, I will appoint
That was
them.
really cheeky, this guy.
I will only appoint them so that they have to submit to the appointing authority. Yeah. When you look at all of that powers and some of the issues that have developed out of the powers that have been given to that office, do you think it's a good idea to appoint them? Or can we keep the voting with them?
Well, thank you. I must say that, no, it was interesting listening to my brother's man here, and so it was important he made his submissions, especially because not only is he a Secretary General, serving Secretary General, but a Secretary General for young and a new political organization, for which I wish him good luck. I was talking to somebody from abroad, a very passionate young Ugandan, a lady, I must say, who agreed with me totally that Ugandan elites are being very, very irresponsible. It was the first time in 2 days young ladies were agreeing with me in this way. that the Ugandan elite are absolutely responsible for the mess in which we are, because they can afford tea. They can come to Digitalk and get sometimes free tea. There's no free, free tea. And so for them, it's okay. People are miserable, going hungry down in Djibouti. They don't care, Ochieno gets power cut, but for them, they've got alternative energy supplies. In this case, possibly they've got expensive solar. So they continue. They get through the traffic jam, but they can pick up a phone and roar and shout and abuse some poor little maid. Do this and do that to the other, including and rush. Why didn't you go and pick up the kid from school on time? Things like that. And for them, it's business as usual. And they're busy sinking the republic. So the Ugandan elite, these two young ladies are being terrible. But saying so. But that said, the other one, the more recent one, was being very, very directly political and saying that she sympathizes with some of what I've got to do, meaning me, because she says, and this is somebody in sort of in her early 30s, so born under this crude regime, so you can imagine how long Ms. Museveni has been around. And she says, we don't have a culture of democracy. We don't have a culture of accountability. We don't have a culture of a due process. We don't have a culture of a rule of law. And everybody does anything they do. And so like everybody cares, nobody cares. Now, the girl went on to repeat everything I'd been telling her earlier. I must say, because this particular individual, we're having a conversation, they've moved into a new country, a new environment, democratic systems work, and we're having conversations, including guiding her how she can manage to navigate her own way successfully there with her family, for which I wish her good luck. Coming back to this, the Republic of Uganda. We founded Uganda National Congress in 1952 after activism. We were a fantastic political party to the extent that by the 10th year, we attained independence and we delivered a progressive, massive miracle that nobody has matched today, just within 8 years. But these are men who had no experience. Some of them, like what who joined them later, the father said Bean was Kenya, if you can understand it. I don't think it would have gone across beyond this continent. But where did these guys get? They just got the determination. I have also said that the founding parents of this party were citizens from across this country. Yesterday I met a new member, again, not the other lady, a new member from Bushenyi. And she talks about her father and her mother. The other day I met a new member from Botambala. And, not Botambala, from Namutumba, our neighbor down there. And she talks about how her grandmother is, unfortunately she passed on recently, he was so UPC that she told her dad that I'm just going to, the dad stood for NRA as an independent, said, I'm going to vote for you because you're my son, but I'm UPC. And then she said that with her sisters, they refused to go and distribute NRA T-shirts. And their dad knew, but he respected them because they knew that they didn't understand. Point was, in all these cases, these people knew the beauty and the values of these organizations. Now, you look at this grandmother. You look at, again, the other professor, retired professor I met at Makerere the other day, again, ironically from Bushenyi, actually. And you talk about the passion. No, this guy is so good. They knew good, and they do know it. We don't have it today. But number two, these guys were generally good citizens from across this country who, because of all those kind of coherence, decent, organized values, not even about this, academic things that these days we throw in our heads. No, they're serious. I am saying this because notwithstanding everything else, we are human beings, and there were human beings those days. In 1958, there was an ideological split in Uganda National Congress. So we split, and by 1959, even the remaining part of Uganda National Congress, they expelled the president. Yep. But the people who expelled the president were the delegates. Delegates conference organized in Bali, and they actually expelled the president. And people power, power of the people. They got rid of the president and elected Milton Obote. In absence, what didn't campaign, didn't have to go and look for dirty money anywhere to convince some funny people, because many, okay, sorry. But you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. That, you know, whatever. So he wasn't there. But what Obote also did was, when he arrived in Bali, he had to look for Musazi, saying, I am looking for my president. So Obote knew Musazi had been deposed. But Obote, in his right mind, said, look, I have to follow systems and order. He looked for Musazi, went and met Musazi. Musazi gave him the guy ahead. Yes, you know, this has happened. You know, good luck. He took it. Those things, those are the issues. It's not about structures, organization, pen kind of stuff. But then fast forward, in 1959, Obote is elected president. But within a year, he's able to bring back the party. Hence the founding of the UPU and UNC coming together to now found Uganda People's Congress with a new name in 1960. You know, leaders, those guys, leadership, the drive, the sense of purpose, the focus, the vision. So it brought us together. Founded. Okay, we had Republic of Uganda. Now, fast short. You know, we're now saying we are new democracy. You know, this funny British Governor General, you know, is in charge. We're going to get rid of him. We get rid of him. You know, very, very radically. Particularly young Congress guys were very radical. They couldn't wait for these things to go. In fact, the younger guys, I spoke to one person, a young Peter Otai, the late, was very young then, and they were saying, the other guys were saying, no, Kabaka Mutesa cannot be president. We just need our own, you know. So they're supporting Nadiope. But the visionary leaders were saying, no, you know, this thing is there. It's for our taking. We've got the numbers, but no, we have to look at the broader, bigger picture. This country is bigger than us. So we gave this thing Sir Edward. As you know, not surprising. Many people, Sir Edward, including tomorrow, they think this Sir Edward was elected nationally, but not necessarily true. We got that. But within 1 year, 1964, after all these beauties, we go for election because we've been boasting that we're Democrats. So every elect position is going to be elected. Elective, you know. Democracy, we were accusing the British. So so our constitution at the time was for elective positions. So the 1964 Delegates Conference Musazi was elected. So elective position for Secretary Generals. So Ibingira, the $1 million man, you know, the story, you know, stands against Kakonge. Kakonge, you're absolutely right, between the two. Kakonge is quite clearly the mainstream UPC, progressive left, ideologically driven congressperson. But he loses, you know. Milton Obote is president. The president does not vote who takes the majority, whatever his preferences. He's the president. He can appoint. But these elections, elected positions. So the majority of the delegates, whatever else happened, whatever manipulation and political manipulations would take place, you know, Ibingira took the day. I can tell you until tomorrow there's some cheeky people, you know, who still blame Milton Obote. Meaning Obote should have, yes, he should not have let him in, or he betrayed Ibingira. So poor guy can't get it both ways. You know what I'm trying to say? But no, it was an elective thing. You know? Yes. So Obote gets Ibingira. So Ibingira was not a creation of Milton Obote. Ibingira was a creation of the system of political manipulation, whatever it was. So he had to serve as a Secretary General. If only he could serve as a Secretary General. Now, the elected position of the Secretary General did not mean, unfortunately, that he had the excess powers that some of the political organizations have. The Secretary General of UPC is subordinate to the President. The President is the chief, in fact, the chief spokesperson of the party, and the national chairman is the chairman of the National Council. You know, which is the internal parliament of the party. You know, so that's a slightly different thing. So this happens, the battles happens. Of course, now fast forward, I came in later. The Bataran guys have the issues in DP. I don't really have much information in terms of some of those details. What happened there, I didn't really pay too much interest there. Bataran guy joins UPC, becomes a fantastic I mean, it's in the UPC, of course, it becomes controversial to some people, where, when Obote was shot at by almost subtly DP-led goons, it was an assassination on the Prime Minister, and Bataringa, as a Minister of Internal Affairs, took action as a minister, as any other minister would have done, and did the right legal thing. And for them, of course, they were that more radical. The person would have wanted all these parties banned, but they're not. Obote, the Democrats, said no. So anyway, whatever happened. So fast forward. That is then. UPC learned its lessons, and since then, our Secretary Generals have been appointed. You see? So in UPC, just like it was the case with branches, we elect branch chairpersons, and the branch chairperson appoints his or her cabinet. I can tell you guys, in normal democracies, those things work. But for me, who was now working in UPC as a general secretary from 1991 to 1995 when I became a bureau chairperson, you hear how critics of UPC or critics of Obote would say, oh, this is dictatorship kind of stuff. Now, when new political parties were coming up, not yours is recent new, they wanted to outsmart UPC. We are Democrats. We shall elect, including the tea maker. We shall elect. And we're Democrats. We're going to get the guy from the bushes of Luwero, and we get back our democracy. You UPC guys. Okay, sounds you guys. I'm saying, but I'm making a point. No, they ought to have, because I got those criticisms. So in the 90s, particularly now, the late part of the 90s, I was now a chairperson of the External Bureau myself, quite engaged at a senior level. You hear these things, including some of our colleagues in the then other oppositions working with us. So we were the problems, internal democracy in UPC. When I look back, there was nothing. By and large, we did in error. So when political parties emerged, they went in for their elective positions for whatever reason they gave. You saw these term limit things came. People pushed term limits for different reasons. They say, limits people. I have opinion about some of those things. I have opinion about those things. These things are not about democracy. In Britain, before I come back to you again on this, Britain does not have term limits. The Conservatives have ruled so discomfortably for me because I'm opposed to them fundamentally. They've ruled for now, I can't believe it, they're coming to nearly 12 years, man. But they've had more than 4 prime ministers. In part because internal party mechanisms work. But in part because the voices of the members work. And you guys, you know what? In part because the power of the media work. But most importantly, public opinion works. You carry out an opinion poll as part of the alternative media opinion poll across the country. And then they find for the next 3 months that Mr. Museveni scores 19 percentage points, And President Ochieno is scoring 79%. You know what? By the 4th month, they will be demanding for a general election. And whatever constitutional mess it is, they'll be pushing for those changes. We want general election now. You see what I'm saying? And Uganda will come in and govern before Mr. Museveni. And Mr. Museveni will go to, like he normally goes with that long, funny truck of his using our money, He will take a trailer of his 100 vehicles, those are our vehicles, 100 of them, they'll reach Tororo and it will be empty. Nobody will respond to him. Public opinion, they work. So that is how we do this checks and balances kind of stuff. So anyway, so from then on, other political parties came, and fair enough. So for us, that was a major lesson. Now, interestingly, as I was learning politics in the 90s, and I think I can quote names like my brother Yoga Dola, was one of the first few people from whom I got some of these things, as some of those issues then. And that's how I came to understand the reason. And even then, even for me as a young person emerging, I didn't appreciate this power dynamics. And in part, as man talks about it, that power is a terrible thing. Now, because of the positions of Secretary Generals, yes, in many cases, some of them want to stretch beyond their limits. And in many cases, maybe their leaders, if they've got weak presidents, the presidents will begin looking behind their backs. So how do you balance many of these other things? When I look at the really, really last Secretary General of a political party in this country before you was Dr. John Luleza Kiruda. The last Secretary General of the major political party that was governing, okay, I don't want to talk about because I've had colleagues since then, was Dr. John Luluza Kirunda, Secretary General from 1980 until, of course, until his death, because, in exile in Zimbabwe, wasted life thanks to these NRA guys. Kirunda was a powerful Secretary General. But he was a powerful Secretary General serving this party. Mwiri Obi, you go to ask. So whenever he would go as the chief administrative officer, which is basically the point for them, of the party. But they're checking party and they're checking party programs and the delivery. Obote didn't look behind him in scare. He knew what his powers were and where his power is. Obote was his chief.
So do you conclude therefore that is it a problem of that there is too much power for the Secretary General, or is it that the leaders themselves, the presidents, party presidents in this case, are just afraid of the ambitions of these men, or is it the systems of the party?
It's possibly neither that, none of those ones I was trying to say, because I was going to come to that. So my point really is that in this case, it's less about them having too much powers, nor is it necessarily about the discomfort of the leaders. In my opinion, it's very much about the personalities involved, and it's about the ideological contradictions that tend to merge. And in what is happening in Uganda today, that's why I put you to Luluza Kirunda as the last in that way. Once this bunch came from the bushes, and they brought the bushes to Kampala, and they sank our railways and sank our airlines, okay? And they sank our schools, and they sank our hospitals, and they sank our national banks. And they turned the national bank into their private tillers, all this mess came up, So really, once UPC forced them to return to multipartyism, and as I said, for that I give credit to the UPC team. The legal team here was led by Peter Walobire, and the legal team of DP that joined us was Irias Lukwago. I need to put that on record, leading us to the return to multipartyism. By the time parties came back, the personal merit polity had taken too much root. And therefore, politics of money, and with that absence of institutions. Asuman here is just telling you, he's just reading from political parties and organizations. He has no experience. He's actually my constituent, isn't he?
Yes.
So he's never been, I don't know when the last time he was in Kisoko to attend a branch meeting of then UPC, because he didn't. I had the relative, I didn't attend, I was young at the time. I don't have the experience, because I'm going to give you comparative just to help this with other countries. So he's never had experience of learning how to be a member in a branch party, and how to be a member of a constituency executive, and how to go to district executive of a party, regional party, which I was going to talk about how other parties work, and see how it works down there. He doesn't have those experiences. So that is how much death NRA has caused to the body politic of this country, and how much we're going to claim back. And in a way, that's really the problem. Now, you are right. When we were going through some of the constitutional amendment process of UPC, I looked through some of those provisions, and actually it came to my head then. I was then actually the Constitutional Manifesto Committee of the Constitutional Steering Commission, returning to constitutionalism in 2005. And that's how I realized actually that the Secretary General has got nearly sweeping powers. But as I said, in a democracy, it's neither here nor there. Our Secretary General has less powers than what you say. For instance, the role of the Treasurer, I was also seeing the FDC report. The Treasurer is not just a watcher from a distance when it comes to fundraising. It's really the responsibility. The Secretary General is chief administrator of the party, but the fundraising should be a job done between the President, the Secretary General, and the Treasurer. Because Secretary Generals tend to be the legalistic, technical kind of guys in rolling all these things like that.
Yes.
So that's sort of where it comes in, and maybe that's why But no, they should not be the supremo to the extent that Secretary General gets money from some places, and the President doesn't know. I'm not saying in this case, or in this case, the Treasurer doesn't know. And like I see from this report, the Treasurer says, I don't know. And then what's the role of a treasurer of the party? You know? So, no, these guys are learning post Museveni, so they're learning in a very bad time. They should come to us in UPC. So we had these things before Museveni, so we have an idea. You know, so that. But then the other thing you talk about is, it's also true that in more recent UPC times, the issues under Mama Miri, I'm trying to be as objective as I possibly can, with the Secretary Generals, there were issues even under Lara.
Yes,
you know,
as well.
And then some of those led to some of the internal challenges we have today. But it is not because of roles, in my opinion, of the Secretary Generals, but rather the politics of it, too, and most importantly, the personalities and the cultures that we've got at the moment. Now, that said, I'll take you to the other political party that I have had the privilege to serve, and that's the British Labour Party. In the British Labour Party, you basically elect a party leader. And the party leader, thankfully, because they're a parliamentary party, they'll form their mini party cabinets. And then they have a party chairman. In fact, actually, they used not even, I think, have a party chairman. It was the Conservative leaders used to have a party chairman. So the party chairman, soft then becomes the cabinet chief administrative person for the party. But the Secretary General is not Secretary General, they call him General Secretary. So the General Secretary of the party is sort of quite a loose element, because the other, because the predominant parliamentary party, they run national polity. The party basically the administrative office with the General Secretary. Fairly powerful person, but the General Secretary of the party runs the party. And party affairs and the cabinet thing, party leadership thing are fairly too different. The leadership supervises what is happening and the policies picked from what the party cabinet does, but they're slightly different. And then number two, of course, then comes the national executive, the most important organ of the party, short of the party conference, which is basically the delegates conference. But because these guys follow rules, they work. But something else I'm trying to tell you. In there, there is the parliamentary party. They run their affairs as in the parliamentary party. You know, there's the local government executives, meaning the equivalent council, district council parties. They run their affairs, and then they're usually regional parties, in which case our Bukini regional party. They run their affairs. And then when do you refer to the secretariat, meaning the party headquarters, HQ, things like that? Neither here nor there. But really, because systems work, and these things can work. These things can work. Problem is, at the moment, the challenge is fighting dictatorship and unwashing the mess of anything from the bush in Jesus' name. That's what we need to do. No, but it's actually possible.
It is true. Let me ask you this one before I cross to him, because we're going to go in a short break. So you do, of course, speak about the Bushmen, and as you have said, they affect how parties run, literally. And
they have no clue, they're not parties.
And that everyone has said. But is it also to say that then eventually, of course, the fights that develop lead to the non-performance of the parties in the long run? They lead to like those internal political issues, like you see with FDC, in the long run affect how the party is going to perform. So can all of that still be counted on them? Is it not also a problem of the party not to have strong structures that even individuals cannot trample upon?
But that's my point. And I sympathize with my other colleagues. For me, that's why I said, even on this program that party messes and people like referring UPC to UPC, please don't refer to UPC, because for us, we're okay, except that Museveni has kissed a few individuals in our party by force, number one. And then number two...
You have 3 UPCs.
No, Museveni has kissed some guys by force, and unfortunately, they also guys who control Uganda House. And then we've got some other guys who rigged elections, but we don't know where they are. I'm about to send the police to look for them, you know. But beyond that, once we're able to sort out the leadership, no, seriously, because I go around the country, any part of the country that I go, I meet party members. They don't say, I'm from this faction, Party members are clearly waiting for leadership. So as a political party, for us, we're absolutely fine. Partly because, as I said, because of those historical things. Ours are no longer those issues. But granted, as I said, no wonder Museveni had to pull a particular lot by force and openly in the part of money. No, I think that when you have these problems, you know, how structures work. I'm just speaking to a member of the FDC who told me that, look, you know, even regardless whatever happens, unfortunately at the top, some of the members of the grassroots have now been very disgruntled. Some of them are very divided, and they may no longer be able to respect or trust some of the guys in the top leadership. Yes, the biggest challenges facing all political organizations is structures, organizations, and leadership. And leadership in the broadest sense, meaning up to the grassroots level. Those are some of our, there's a battle across. Like for NRA, in fact, the worst one is NRA. Because NRA, meaning, UPM. Do you know any branch of UPM in Tungamo? They don't. Museveni does not have the party branch for UPM, does not have party branch for NASA, does not party branch for NRA. No, they've got branches for the Republic of Uganda, which they usurped by force.
I've only seen one person who belongs to UPM.
Because
Only one. I've also been here before, but I was interested.
UPM, can we help that person to reclaim his UPM party? Maybe once Museveni retires. It is urgent that political parties build structures. It's urgent that political parties have coherent, clear objectives and directions. I don't want to overteach them because I've got my own interest. And it's important that leaders, and particularly the elite, begin to learn to get interested in politics, to begin to participate in politics, to begin to get involved in elected politics, to begin to help us interpret some of these party rules. Because some of these guys, they hold these meetings, they don't understand some of this, to be fair to them. And many of them just well-meaning, in people, including my own UPC, they're just well-meaning, but they're not able to interpret many of these other things. We need, without prejudice, mine is a mass party, but there's an element of imperative social class. I've been telling people that, I was in Western Uganda the other day, and I was telling a district leader that whether you like it or not, some of the guys we need to recruit, we need guys to replace you, but you need somebody who, when they replace you, when they come to the National Delegates Conference, they can take a motion and defend it, and maybe they can take a motion and defend it against the position of President Ochieno. And that requires some skill, that requires somebody. And I can tell you, it will not be somebody who left P6 UPE. You see?
Before we go to a short break, I want to also get his perspective on whether you think the party secretary general should be elected or appointed by the party president.
I think don't.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk. The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Looking for a pair of shoes? Less Up Stores has a wide range of selection for unisex footwear. We have the best quality of all brands at pocket-friendly prices, and we make deliveries countrywide. Just place your order or reach us on 0772 08 0090. You can also check up at Less Up Stores on all our social media platforms. Less Up, craft your own footprints.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome back. My name again is Roger Stuyawe, and together with Honorable Joseph Ochieno and Mr. Asuman Odaka, we are here to talk about a number of issues. We began from home about the political parties, and of course, in light of the current developments in one of the opposition parties, wanted to get to understand where all of these things has come from, the history, put some things into perspective, maybe try to understand the underlying issues that cause this kind of situation. We apologize for what just happened. These things do happen, and they are beyond our own powers, so we have to go with what is there and until we have better. But when we were cut off, Asuman was giving us his perspective on whether he thinks it is better to do appointment for secretary generals or should be for voting.
I was just telling you that if you listened from my big brother Joseph, I think the real point he made is that the issue is not whether appointed or elected or what. It also has a lot to do with the environment we now operate now, then personality, which I think is very, very, because I am a secretary general of need. I know for a fact I struggle and strive to work within the boundaries so that I do not cross to clash with the president, because I know the president also knows where and how we are supposed to work. But besides, our culture at need, and forgive us because we're a new party, is that we keep saying, and even today I was telling colleagues, I was telling them, you see, as a party, we have our objective. The objective of this party is what all of us are serving.
Yes.
That therefore means that these positions we have are simply, should not be, nobody should build a wall around a position and say, please don't cross here. Because probably my crossing there, sometimes I cross because I need result. And if my crossing there is facilitating, is complementing
The mission and vision
towards the achievement of the ultimate goal, then I must cross. But you see, let the crossing be therefore understood in that perspective, that I am not usurping your power, but I am only trying to complement or help in the achievement of the other goal. That is one. Number two, which is the environment we are operating in. It is part of the reason many people now find difficulties. And now you, Joseph, you even worse, that you may not fit in any of these, and they may look at you as, they may even begin looking at you as idealistic, and so, because you think parties, their ideals, and parties, let me say, association, your association with the party must be based on your ideological belief. And fortunately, the people you said arrived in this town in 1986 seem to have killed that. That you see, a party is simply
a vehicle for pocket change.
Some vehicle, some not even a vehicle, but you see, some political supermarket where they go and they are up there so that the political purchaser is coming to see them.
Shoppers.
It is really that. You see, if it wasn't that, you go to electoral commission. And by the way, now people are looking for just people to, you register the party, but they are looking for people to sell to parties. You can imagine where we've got to. They are looking, do you want a party, man? Something. You get it?
They are vending parties.
Yes, it is now vending on the streets. Now, that brings into perspective what Joseph is saying. And what I'm saying is that, now, I went and registered. Let me give an example. Farmers Party of Uganda. There is one called Farmers. There is one called Peasants Party of Uganda. Now, some parties' name actually would be partly part of what describes what that party stands for. But my party is called, I'm just giving an example. Actually, that party exists. I know the owner, he shouldn't. I'm just mentioning it because he's my friend. He will not. So, Peasants Party of Uganda. And then you see the nitty-gritty, what does this party stand for, this and so on. And you find that out of all the 30-plus parties, very few understand, first of all, even why they have registered the party, why they belong to that party, and so on and so forth. Let me tell you, there was a time in this country, and probably even now, that people were having 2 or 3 party cards. That somebody, that I have a party card of UPC, I have a party card of NRM, I have a party card of, because of the environment. Somebody truly believes that he is UPC, but because the guys who arrived in town say the service says if you want A, B, C, D,
You must belong.
you must show evidence that you actually belong to us. So I am forced to belong there. So some parties are meal cards. For example, I will tell you, and I know some of them, even my colleagues who are members of parliament, they came to parliament using what my brother calls NRA, NRA color. But you see, when they get to parliament, they tell you, I am going to speak my mind. I know that we were with them at university, they actually don't believe. But you see, to get me to, somebody tells you, my brother, I believe in your party, you member. They even give you some support as a political party. But they will tell you that, you see, for us to go there, I want this flag. I want this flag. So that is the other thing. But also that speaks to the mentality of the guy on top there who influences all those. I was looking at, there's a letter he wrote to Norbert Mao. People should get interested in that letter. Of course, that letter shows you that the man does not believe in diversity. In that letter, he begins by narrating the history of stability of this country from the Bachwezi. He says this country was only stable when the Bachwezi were the ones governing this region. And of course, you know what Bachwezi used to do. Bachwezi, part of what we read in the details of Bachwezi, they never believed anybody can be different, including language. They needed you even to speak with the same language. Now, then he says the only next time this region was again stable was when he arrived in town. Of course, he wants to think that he's another Muchwezi.
The grandson of Muchwezi.
Another Muchwezi. Yeah. But when he reaches there, he begins abusing, insulting, and downgrading other institutions, cultural institutions. Mentality of Bachwezi kabisa, religious institution, and he's calling them chauvinists, religious chauvinists. Then he comes to political parties and he says that in 1996 for them, they got 75%, so 76%. And what had made him lose sleep is that about 16 or something percent that he's the elder, he called him Elder Semogerere got. So his interest has been to bring that support that Elder Semogerere got into his party so that there should not be more than one party.
So that explains the other one.
Yes.
Mao now.
Now, that he was explaining Mao's contribution into the coming. So in other words, the guy does not believe in diversity. So the guy will do anything and everything. You remember during the referendum thing, 2005, his issue was not about having a different platform where people would contribute. His issue was let us leave them go. Now, my point here is that the guy simply will not allow, his character is that will not allow any player, will not allow sanity in political parties, so he will put agents, and he has brought an environment where people think in terms of everything must be vended, including politics. So he will get those vendors, he pushes them, he ferments crisis, and it will be as if Secretary Generals are also fighting with the presidents and so on. And for you, because there is history written that Secretary Generals and President ever fought, you will say, okay, it is the same history, and we bundle them in the same historical dust.
As you conclude on that one, what lessons do we pick and take from the current situation of the FDC, as all the other parties, because any other party is prone to that kind of issue. It can happen anytime.
Yes.
It has happened to some, and it's still happening. What lessons do you pick as the opposition parties?
I think the issue, the only reason I discuss it the way I discuss is because I know for a fact that it is not out of the creation of FDC in itself. It is externally originated out of the party. And all of us know the person who did that. It is very bad that...
Are you challenging the report?
Well, I know. I have spoken to even the chairman of the elders committee that made the report. In law, there is what they call balance of convenience. Sometimes you weigh and say, okay, if I make this decision, well, it is not the right. It is not the decision that reflects the evidence and everything. But will it? How damaging is it to the?
What effect can it have?
Yes. What effect? So sometimes those decisions are made. Those reports are influenced by balance of convenience. No. So I understand that. But you see, the fact is, what part of the lesson is maybe our fundraising strategy as parties. Because it looks like the weak link has always been the fund, the money, how to get the money. The guy's entry point has been money and money and money. So, of course, we have always made arguments in regard to the funding of political parties. When the principle was brought, the whole thing was then pushed to parties in parliament, and then parties in parliament, because I thought there should be some, once I have formed up a party, and I have met certain threshold, it shouldn't be that the registration certificate alone, it should be certain threshold. Then I qualify for a certain amount to help me do A, B, C, D. But you see here, the principle, we made the arguments for the principle, it was provided, they then said parties in parliament. Of course, parties in parliament, if it is the last time, there's a time they gave 10 billion, the NRM took 80 billion, 8 billion to NRM. Then the other time they made, I think this budget, they're about 35, but about 30 is for NRM. So what part are you helping? So what are you helping? So, but I think we need to have proper conversation in the new dispensation, because part of the proposals I'm making are not for this regime, because these ones are already done. I have written them off. So we need to begin having a conversation. And by then they're in their evening. We need to begin making proposals and the thinking to have proper institutions or party, other institutions, including parties. By the way, there is something that we think that Museveni does. We think that he's only targeting political parties. But you see, these quarrels and whatevers of money, Museveni has done it even into other institutions. You know, religious institutions. For us, me, I come from the Muslim faith. You don't know how many factions Museveni has created in the Muslim faith. Show me one cultural institution in this country that is standing without problems and quarrels by Museveni's money. He creates this one, he funds all of them, and he does all that. So really everything. So the whole thing is, it is the character we have who is in charge of our Bank of Uganda.
Mr. Ochieno, sir. His lesson is majorly funding, that what the parties need to do is to find for ways to source for resources. Now, in an environment that we have, where even the funding institutions are chased away from the country. You have a case study of the DGF that was funding civic spaces in Uganda and all of that, those developments. One, how do you think that can be achieved? Because that has been generally accepted as one of the weak links, as he says. But also you can add on that and you know, shed some light on what...
But my proposal in that is conditional on the fact that we first chase away Museveni.
Okay.
No, I think I suggested at the beginning, that the challenges beyond the external, which is Museveni, NRA dictatorship, and all the crimes that's committed in this country. Sadly, that they are reality. That even as we sit on this program, it impacts on us to the extent that we're even able to have an interruption of our programs. Very, very, very sad, actually. Very, very sad. I have had 3 power cuts in 2 days. In a relatively okay area. It's criminal, but maybe sometimes that's one of the reasons why Museveni is so desperate to hang on by any means necessary. But we tell him from UPC that no, we shall not chase him to Rashkitura, but we shall invite him from Rashkitura to come and have tea with us. Because we forgave him a long time ago, the crimes they committed in this country, forgave them a long time ago. But they should give our younger children the possibilities, you guys the possibilities, to have a better Uganda beyond today. So that said, I think I still want to stick to political parties. We have something very interesting in UPC. Museveni kissed G. McKenna and his girlfriend plus a few people. And McKenna went on through an electoral process. His opponents challenged him. The opponents went to court. It was an NRA court, if you want to call it, And the opponents won. Jim McKenna appealed. Granted, the appeal took 4 years. 5 years, in fact. I intervened through my Sunday column, embarrassing the judiciary a bit. They responded. The matter was disposed of against Akena. Court of Appeal ruled that Akena is not leader under NRA.
Yeah, sure.
So in a way, that is a system challenging that. The Justice Mulia Gonja, in a very fantastic way, fairly definitively ruled and directed that fresh election be held for the party. The person then who was interim leader, who had taken over from Joseph Bossa, who had taken over from Olara, who Olara gave me interim leadership. Joseph Bossa a lawyer, Olara a lawyer, Joseph Bossa a lawyer, hands over to Peter Walubiri, the guy we're now going to send the police to look for, is a lawyer. Walubiri organizes an election, appoints an electoral commission with the chairman, who my good friend, Hamza Sewankampo, good guy, yes. A lawyer. In his team, they have Ishoto, former member of parliament. They have the Hatchman, the former Bakari for Jim McKenna, Tom Omino, yeah. A lawyer. Yes. This boy then becomes the net sweeper of chasing papers and rubbing. Those days we use erasers. Time has passed, erasers and fixing. So they fix these things. So these are lawyers, you see what I'm saying? And they mess up the thing to the extent that, and better say it here, those elections, I was telling somebody today from another, political party, this story because they're wondering about the UPC thing. The elections took place by resolution because of the COVID times. Yep. Notwithstanding all the other irregularities, to the extent that none of the 3 other candidates except 4, myself, Dan Okello, and Dixon Opul. Dan Okello's wife is a judge. So we're all fair legally conscious-minded guys, but sensible leaders who UPC, You're not street kids in Kabamba looking for sticks to throw over those funny fences, No. So we do these things. None of us was present at the Tally Center. None of our agents were. Until tomorrow, none of us have seen results returns from any of the districts. I wrote formally, me Ochieno, who bought his boy, I wrote formally to ask for these things. I didn't get them. My lawyer wrote, didn't get them. I issued a statement saying that if I don't get a response, I'm going to go to court. I don't get a response until I decided to go to court. Now, that is not the Kenya wing of, but this is Walubiri. The trail of lawyers there. Where is Museveni in it? Unless maybe, of course, Museveni works in funny ways. I'm not making an allegation. Unless Museveni has got also funny hands. He's a Marxist in the morning, communist in the evening, and by evening he is in Nyampala for Anglo-America. So maybe, has he got a hand in there? Perhaps. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So you see, some of these things are not about Museveni. It's about us. So these guys, knowing very well that we had gone through 4 years election of a president, you've been directed by court, and you even have an election. This guy's a cheek man. You have an election in which Ochieno is a candidate. Ochieno is a candidate. And you want to hold it like some rural, that thing where Kadaga was coming from. The LC one of that funny place, The LC one of some, election of that. So these things is about us, people, leaders and personalities. Now, since then, I actually tried, I'm saying to this program, I tried to seek dialogue. I expected leaders, elders of the party to come up and say, guys, what's happening? Ochieno is complaining, these guys are complaining, what's happening? In an amazing way, looking at the Nabiso report, they actually did it in a very interesting way. We heard from so-and-so, we heard from so-and-so. These are the things. Even you don't necessarily need experts. Yeah, sure. What happened? You guys, where are the files? Where are the papers? Do figures add up? In my election petition, I'm putting into this. In my election petition, there is one district where the maximum 9 delegates. Maximum 9 delegates. I won 8. Walubiri won 1. I've got the original papers, In that despair to try and turn my 300 plus votes against Walubiri's 100 plus votes into a majority of Walubiri, the fudged figures went to places like Butambala and Piji. One person writing the same thing. Of course, Butambala and Piji were disallowed. And I got copies of those ones. They went to some of the places where UPC doesn't have constitution or whatever, look through, Kisenyi, Nkrumah Road, write names, put to add totals for these people. Changed figures. So in this particular district, desperately, because they're looking for numbers to add, they gave Walubiri 2 votes. And those official results. So meaning, Secretary General, you see what I'm saying? Walubiri has been a Secretary General. Yep. He's a senior lawyer, quite respected by particularly you guys in legal fraternity. Yeah. I was asking some professor the other day, I was sitting with him in a program. I didn't say it openly. I wondered, this professor, this guy has been teaching, including history in Uganda. This country is in crisis. But that's a different topic. Yep. So sometimes you wonder, what is it that people have studied? What is this people that people are learning? And what is it that people are imparting? So these guys shamelessly add 1 vote for Walubiri. And so in that district, and that's official, the total now is 10 votes instead of 9. The despair is, of course, finally when they made sure that I think maybe it was I still had 271. They didn't know how they went to one certain district, bribed another lawyer, almost certainly bribed, I don't know, but it's a lake that the lawyer claimed he didn't vote. So they nullified the 7 votes from there. So
to reduce
this. The person who allegedly told Hamza that he did not vote, and so made Hamza decide to cancel the 7 to 0 votes that I got in that district. is a lawyer, allegedly, you know. Hence, Walubiri coming out with a total of now 278 versus my 271. Now, this is how miracles happen. In the middle, it's like Museveni's, what are they? Like his son's thing when they come from Russia. All the streets in Kampala would have been leveled, no potholes. You know, miracle. I told you guys, you know, countdowns have got miracle, work magic. You know, so these things work. So you can imagine. So that is how cheap it can be. But these are lawyers, these are Ugandans, these are people who've been in politics, and they've been desperately leaders in opposition. Now, Walubiri, I gave the guy credit there for his net contribution with us and the leadership of the military body to claim back the political process. And he does that. He has said that he was not a party, he was just a candidate, he didn't participate. But he appointed the Electoral Commission and issued a complaint. Why don't you just speak and say, oh, Hamza, is this true? What happened? Can I look at it also? That's leadership. These are the problems we have. That I've given a snapshot of it, but that's really what's part of the problem in this country. So in a way, there is a problem, but the problem you guys, in the earlier I talked about elites. No, Ugandans just need to wake up and say, no, enough is enough, we need to do something. People need to come together, leadership will emerge. People need to come together, there'll be an innovative ways. Asuman, I was saying in another program the other day, I'm not going to talk down your political party. And on this conversation of FDC, I've been saying, including the other piece, and I didn't have your party in mind. I was saying that, and you read maybe my Sunday piece, that we don't need more political parties, you know, or rather more political parties have emerged since the return to multipartyism, but it hasn't emerged with commensurate leaders. So we haven't really had men and women of integrity and of determination and of resolve, people who are bringing us together. You guys come together, let's work here. What is it that we can do? I have argued separately, I'm sorry to take you a bit away. I've argued separately, for instance, and again, it's not a personal thing. I've argued, for instance, that BCG and others who came from NRM, maybe if they had joined us in UPC and DP, the traditional political parties, we would not have been having some of this mess, you know, kind of stuff. But then fast forward to where we are and where we're going, because I'll put it towards this alternative solution. So if you see some of these things, I am just saying, I don't see some of these things happening in other political parties, although I've contradicted myself that the mess I saw at the UPC leadership thing, I never imagined it would happen anywhere in a UPC leadership. But I'll fast forward to you. I saw an incident in which I was chairing a UPC meeting in London, where a member of my executive exhibited a rude, almost a physical push of another colleague of mine. And in fact, you know, I took exception. I wrote a protest letter to Milton about it. I'm saying we need leadership. And I told the president, I don't expect this. I never expected it in any UPC meeting. I don't expect any UPC meeting, let alone UPC meeting in which I'm chairing. And in this case, it was in my living room. As an executive, I would normally do those things. So, no, we need leaders. We need people who are committed. I told at the beginning of the program, how could we start in the 50s with some people, some of them purely illiterate, by the way, you know, some of them semi-illiterate. These guys lead us to independence and deliver to us the Republic of Uganda as we know it today, that 40 years NRM has failed to govern. So I hope that younger people like yourselves emerging, you know, take it, one, that this country has ever been possible, it has worked, and is possible. Learn lessons from elsewhere and bring it here. I want to link with, in essence of finality, the question of elected positions. In 1995, when we opened the official external bureau of the party, when Milton Obote was giving us a directive to formally constitute beyond an interim office called the Uganda UPC, we used to call it just a UPC office in London. So when we were constituting formally as a bureau answerable to the office of the president at the time, he said that nobody should be appointed. So he gave a directive. But it was part of what Asuman was saying, the culture and the atmosphere. Remember, one, we're in exile. Remember, two, he also wasn't sure about what other forces and interests were there. And remember, this was now a vibrant unit of the party there. So he directed exceptionally, unlike the constitution of the branches and the party systems here, nobody should be appointed. And so we had election from the chairman, you know, to include the 10 members of the executive. Now, That, by and large, worked. But one thing that it just came to my mind, I was the initial secretary because I was actually the chief administrative person for the party from 1991, for about 5-6 years. So once Mr. Lolobo served for 2 years, and I became the chairman until today. I've not been replaced. I then became the secretary, the chairman of the bureau. But I was the general secretary. When I was the general secretary, I was actually the executive secretary. Basically, I was still doing everything. The guy would just come for formalities. You guys, when I became the chairman, and I'm saying this is a pity, my good brother, we are learning to go forward. I had a general secretary, actually called it just bureau secretary, not secretary general, elected. Actually, had I had my powers, I would have sacked him. I'm saying it open. I would have sacked him. This is a guy who is a good friend, a good friend. We ran a powerful external bureau. It was the biggest, most powerful unit of the party outside Uganda House and outside Lusaka, I'll say that. And we did a great job. But you know what? The frustrations I had. Meaning you organize a branch, you organize for a meeting, and the guy doesn't send out notices on time. Now for me, I'm organizing this because we thought we were learning lessons. You turn up for minutes of the last meeting, which was more than a month ago, there are no written minutes in place. For me, I'm chairman of the party, secretary of the head of the all students, African students in Europe. I'm a secretary of the Labour Party branch and constituency. I write all this in the middle. I work full time, long, heavy jobs, and I do all this kind of stuff. The guys, so personality and personal interests and attitudes are terrible things. So, new, predominantly younger, resolved leadership ought to merge on this continent, in this country, and amidst political parties. That's why I am busy training young, decent, mobilized, organized guys, and if they're listening and watching, some of them actually think I'm rather too harsh on them, but no, it's not a beauty pageant for me. I just genuinely believe that we need to create a new leadership that emerges, that they understand institutions, organizations, disciplines, systems, and time, because it's very urgent. As a continent, we can't afford it. As a country, the mess that Uganda Museveni has left is going to take serious discipline, serious organization. Some people say I'm too ambitious. I mean, that I'm a bit much more optimistic. But what is the alternative? I genuinely believe, Asuman, that in this mess, Rogers, the younger Ugandans out there, including those who we didn't know yesterday they could belong to political parties, tomorrow they can become, properly guided, emerge as party leaders, follow organization, follow system. Because at the peak of this also, as I said about personalities, if you've been elected president, you should have the confidence to know that you're in charge of an organization. And surely if you've been the secretary general, even if elected directly, as Asuman says, you should know what your boundaries are. But that's where I'm trying to say part of political ideology. Do these leaders have a common interest, meaning the big agenda? Most of our leaders today, by and large, don't. And when it's wrapped to the politics of dirty money, which NRA has unleashed on the country, it becomes very hard. So only strong guys will win. But like my good friend, Dr. Tony Quinn says, only good guys win.
And as we are running out of time, and I thought that we'd talk a little bit about the current Russia-Africa summit. Of course, where we had our president and all the other delegates, as you might have seen. Does this thing have any relevance? And I think, let me begin with Mr. Odaka. When you look at all of these things that have happened, we've had the US-Africa summit, we have had now the Russia-Africa summit. In the future, we could have any other country Africa summit.
We have Turkey.
Turkey. Does this thing have any relevance?
Well, from my own perspective, I think Mr. Museveni and the other African, let me talk about Mr. Museveni, has exhibited the biggest contradiction of self as always. I don't want to be blind to the fact of interdependence of nations. I don't want to be blind about it. But I want to anchor my analysis around the utterances and the limit set by Museveni himself. Mr. Museveni criticizes our traditional leaders for having allowed, he calls it allowing, colonialists,
Imperialists,
sometimes
as he calls them.
imperialists, he calls them foreigners, he calls them all sorts of names, to come here. Or he accuses them of weakness. Why would they not unite to repulse these foreigners? He keeps saying that. Even in that same meeting, he was talking about we should never allow imperialists to come back to Africa. In that same meeting where he was speaking, you can imagine the naivety. But you see, I keep thinking that if you look at everything he was, the appeal, the prayers, the things he was asking for, it is like he's again inviting the same imperialists to come here, except this time he's inviting them when he's the president and the other ones were simply cultural chiefs. I do not see anything. When he went there, he is asking them to come and do agriculture here. At least you should have heard his son-in-law. Then he said they met some people who are coming to do agriculture, and their focus is going to be about 4 areas within agriculture. Himself, he went and met some people, calling them to come and establish or support in the oil and petroleum sector here. Of course, the guns and what.
Notwithstanding, of course.
Of course, is part of the obvious. The asking of the AK-47 and so on. You know, don't forget that that's where AK-47 originates from. But by and large, my own analysis is that he is inviting, if you read which book I know you've read, The Africa Must Unite, or about the Kwame Nkrumah works generally. He was warning, and when you read it, you think he was prophesying about the time we are now living in. Museveni is bringing the vinties, they are called vinces, this one of coffee.
Vinches, yes.
Yes, vinches here, giving them all rights in regard to some of our resources. Where me and Joseph come from, and especially that side of Utira where they are mining the gold, where government's own record indicates that they are mining about 1 ton of gold every day. That's government's own record. You go and see the kind of people who have absolute ownership of that gold mine. They are not Ugandans. When you go to the Ruenzori there, about the tea leaves, the people who are absolutely benefiting from the tea leaves are not Ugandans. When you go to, the other day, they postponed the election of LOC1 on account that they don't have 50 billion. Yet,
60 actually, 60.9.
Yes, around there. But you see, they had a week earlier, they had made close to 200 billion for a certain lady they are doing at Yak Sugar. A week early. Supplementary budget. And she is not Ugandan. I am not saying foreigners should get out of here. That's why I started with my point. I'm not blind to interdependence. So if you look at it right now, he's still making appeal for petroleum people to come and do refineries here and so on. It's because of the Total and so on, EU's issue with the compensation here, ECOP issues. So when you look at Mr. Museveni, what he's doing now, and part of and he's using those platforms, is to try again and sell this country back to the foreigners, the very ones he's abusing. When he goes to if you look at Mr. Museveni from where I have contested that issue that is a Pan-African, he is not. We know that he is the one who was used to fight until Sudan was cut into, balkanized. We know the wars, and in addition, we keep reading in history that King Leopold led to the death of about 15 million Congolese. We don't know how many Mr. Museveni has led to, how many million in Congo because of his wars. So and all those wars are not his. They are being sponsored. There are even people who to date contest the fact that the war in Somalia is really in Pan-African spirit. We think we are mercenaries, and indeed, by the way the entire thing is done, it is as if we are a mercenary force fighting a proxy war for a certain external forces. So all these have no relevance in regard to the securing or preservation of our national sovereignty. It has a question.
And as you conclude altogether.
Yes, it has a question. So Mr. Museveni, all he's doing is selling, actually he's selling our national sovereignty to a more vicious and more dangerous version of colonialists and imperialists than those he's abusing. Really, that's what he's doing. Where he goes to we were just talking to somebody that you go, a president of a country who has gone in the spirit of a country, then you say this, you introduce your delegation and say, this is my son, this one is my cousin, is the one who babysat that son, and this is my daughter, and that is the daughter's husband, and this is my cousin of...
Was that the delegation?
Yes. Look through that.
As we conclude and leave this place, with all of, I saw one time he was speaking, and he was speaking about the period about Libya and Gaddafi and NATO, and I don't know if you know the time when the delegation from Africa, I think it was about 6 presidents, who were refused by NATO to land in Libya. They communicated that for you won't land in Libya. Meanwhile, by NATO, that is an external force. And he was very furious, saying you cannot come from the other side and give us orders on an African land, African presidents about an African issue. That in context, Africa-Russia summit, what is there for us? As we also conclude.
I think as Asuman says, we need summits. I speak as a representative of the party whose president made the initial trips, Milton Obote, made the initial trips at independence to Russia and former Soviet republics. And that did not go well with the Anglo-American Pineti imperialists. And for that, it lines on the records of textbooks that Obote is a bad man. And when I say so, I can see your camera person is a young, beautiful lady. She's now wondering, what history is this? Now I'm telling the factual history, and that's a fact. And so that said, as Osman says, I don't know what these deals are. They're very irritating. That while my president then made bilateral trips, and so did he also make bilateral trips to America. It is the case that Africa, after our petitions, and Africa, after our independence, we're seeking to become independent nation states, and we're looking to become independent major big continental body. That would be the power that owns and controls the biggest and hugest amount of resources on the planet. Because you say, what has grown China recently? What grew Singapore? What grew Malaysia? What grew South Korea? What is it that they grow? We've always been talking about these things. It's just a shame that these guys get paraded and go to London, and then they travel in those buses that I travel in London in the cold as refugee Ochieno, refugee from Enari. But when they're sent there, these guys go and then serves them right. They go to Washington, and then some of their headlines, the press spokesperson who are former journalists who pretend to be, have been very nice. They really work very hard to try and coin. The president will meet in the corridor with the other one, so the president is also human. You know, you see, kind of stuff. So no, it's unfortunate, because if Africa as a continent had done some of the things that our founding parents did, by today we would not only be a major organized united continent, as one says, but one in which foreign leaders do pay us visits and come to pay us visits on terms. In the event that I were president of this country, I would insist that, in the very least, because we're still divided 50-plus nation states, that if we have some of these things, these guys should come and talk to us at the African Union headquarters, like Barack Obama did at the time, rather than us actually making these group talk journeys. Now, but it was very strange that these guys make these group talk journeys and then they present that, oh, we come here to beg for wheat. I can tell you that...
and then the sidelines, each one of them is trying to
Wheat
put
and
their
popcorn.
Yeah, indeed. I don't know the last time I ate anything related to wheat. You know, even in my Puatoro, Museveni has made my district, Masabridge. Bukit is now amongst the 3 most impoverished parts of the country. And yet in Tororo, there are still people who still kneel down and say, Nyongo, Nyongo, no change. Oh, I don't know whether it's the gods of the Yeltsins or the gods of the, these Russian czars that Mr. Museveni uses to confuse fellow Ugandans. So no, those are really wasted journeys on general terms. I mean, at the end of the day, they make deals. But what deals? If you see Mr. Museveni of 1986, the way he was 86, boasting in 1988 that he was going to turn his and create an NRA engineering unit that is going to sort out our rail lines, Mr. Museveni talk about engineering thing and he has killed our railways. And as Oban is saying, one of the things we need to do, just like we're sending police to look for certain guys in UPC, a few of them, we maybe need to send police to Mr. Museveni to explain where he took our rail sleepers. Because there are videos doing the rounds in 1988 that, there's no need for us to get foreigners to build our rail networks. So the point is this. If as of 1988, we did not need foreigners to build our sleeper rails, there's no reason why we should be begging for technology from Russia or anybody else for our oil.
Oh, yes.
Our oil, Museveni, you did not come with those oils in the bushes. This again on the record. We knew this oil existed. Nobody knew these oils existed. One of the things that we did was we did not want to create excess, excitement by foreign powers, because we know they do that because of our resources. We needed and we wanted to build capacities fast. So, what is overthrow of 1971, other than the challenges, Asuman, for our commitment to liberation struggles in South Africa? It was also because we're supporting Lumumba's forces in Congo. So for us, we're supporting Lumumba's forces in Congo to claim back our Congo. Museveni has sent his dubious guys down there to go and loot and thieve Congolese resources, and to side with Anglo-America, that we were fighting there. And Museveni, Nyongo, Pan-African, you know what I'm trying to say? So that is them. But also I'm saying that we did that then. Since then, one of the problems what I had with the Western nations, which you'll not find in your history lessons, is that he was saying to the Israelis of this world at the time that we are a young independent nation. If you're coming to bring a major project at Kampala, for example, if you're going to bring a project that can miraculously knock off potholes and rebuild our rail networks, including Nagongera, you may bring project directors, you may bring elements of technology, but we also have our young, engineers, going to Chambogo, like the camera lady here and the very sharp, fantastic, We want our guys also to be there. We reject the idea that you bring everything, including saucepans, and that the only thing that Ugandans are pushers of wheelbarrows. So I'm told Anglo-Americans were saying these guys are radical Africans, they're going to build Africa. And that's part of the problems that we faced, meaning UPC we had in the 60s. Now, those leaders that pushed for enabling our people, pushed for protection of our resources, pushed for growing of our resources, and pushed for reunion of Africa in a holistic way rather than serving Anglo-America. The African Union, meaning the Organization for African Unity, UPC, were founding members as Uganda. The founding of the East African Community, one of the things that we did, and of course we had a slight disagreement with Nkrumah. Nkrumah wanted this that we could have realistically one Africa kind of stuff. And our understanding then was that because we had been so deeply broken up, as you can see now, it was going to possibly be unrealistic that all of a sudden we start with one government, in this, situation. Let's build by block, hence they then started with the regional blocks at the time. But even then, we did it quite successfully. This African community, within a very few years.
As you're concluding.
Yes, indeed, I'm concluding, but it's very important to open up this conversation. And I know your viewers would really like to have this. East African communities within 3-4 years were the model on which the European Union, in those days initially called them the European Economic Community, EEC. They bought the blueprint. Did you know that? Yeah. No, he did not know.
I did.
So you better make 2 cups of tea next time, man. So European, Ted Heath wrote about it because you read. So Ted Heath wrote about it because he said the EU had the East African community succeeded. It was going to be too big for them, too difficult for them to penetrate. They used this on record.
That's true.
So we're doing these things, we're opening up Africa. But finally, since you're now chasing me off time, Africans don't like much knowledge, some young Africans, they don't like information. Anyway, between independence and a means time, we're able to build, I keep on repeating, it might be boring, but it's facts and painful. We built a revolutionary healthcare system in this country. We built a revolutionary educational system in this country. We built a revolutionary infrastructure system in this country. We built a revolutionary public housing infrastructure in this country. We built Kampala, and we built major nations. We built Jinja as our industrial capital, strategically thinking. Toro was our second largest deliberate, industrial capital of this country. We built air traffic system. We built everything. We built agricultural emancipation. We had gone for the irrigation schemes for across the country, including the cattle dips that you guys enjoy, the milk that you don't even want to share with me, And then we were looking at irrigation programs that would include Karamoja, and that's one of the areas again where Israel wanted a contract, and we didn't agree with Israel because Israel wanted to work out a project on River Nile that would punish Egypt because of the Arab-Israeli conflict that he would be interested. And from our point of view, at the time we supported the Palestinian Liberation Organization, part of the conflict. I'm saying we did that predominantly using our domestically generated resources. These funny African rulers who make these trips using our monies, who take their families and babysitters, to those places at our monies, Why are they after all these years? They use our monies to take families for those summits. For us to be able to create those miracles using predominantly our locally generated resources. So my point to you there in conclusion is actually realize that had it not been for these funny bush fellows, if you take a UPC 8-year blueprint and you map it over these people's 38 years, it is possible that Uganda would not need Russia-Africa Summit today. Are we together?
Yes.
No. These guys, NRA is the biggest tragedy this country has ever had. And NRA-like rulership across the continent, including these ones that therefore enable and cause to create coups in places like Niger and the Sahel. Underlying issues, we blame France. Underlying issues, we blame Europe. That's absolutely true. The biggest nyampala for these Western influences on Africa is Mr. Museveni, in part as Asuman said it. So no, we blame those guys, but we've got their agents, top agents, are some of those guys who took families to Russia. That's the realities. Young Africans, wake up. It is possible for us to have leadership. It's possible for us to have organizations. It's possible for us to have democracy and sustainable nation states. It's possible for us to have political parties with secretaries general, and presidents that work, that function for members. And it's possible, as I gave at the beginning, it's possible to have functioning political parties where the mandate is what it calls the party is the grassroots, meaning the branches. Therefore, you go to a delegates conference and they're able to diselect a president and appoint somebody else. When you create those party rules, systems will work. And some of these guys, there would be nobody as powerful. The Blairs were not as powerful. I was there. They would need to go ahead and beg, for the membership. That's what the thing that these rulers fear. But anyway, general African conclusion from this point of view, I think as long as we have these leaders, we have a continent that should not necessarily need to go and beg for wheat in Russia, when we have all the land in Karamoja, but instead Karamojan kids, instead of working with their parents in the garden, they're begging in the streets of Kampala. And instead of them having their billions are in the pockets of some guy called Minister for Finance and their team under NRA.
Thank you. My voice is dying out.
You shy?
But thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. My voice has issues.
Sorry.
But from today's discussion, I do get a number of issues. The biggest being that it takes all of us, and it's going to take an extended time. That is what we had for you today, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'm better now. That's what we had for you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate every one of you for being a part of the discussion and for joining us for this long. I hope that you share the video with your friends. Put it across. Let us learn together. I feel like there's just so much that we do get from these discussions if we could just make the time. The young people who are in that funny place clapping hands for 3 hours, I hope you could join us for one of these discussions. I feel like we could take this country in a better place. Thank you so much. Have yourselves a very good night.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.